My sister-in-law told the entire family group chat that I was banned from her corporate gala. 11 relatives laughed, agreeing I would humiliate them. They had no idea I owned the venue, so I made one call that ended everything. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The headache had been pulsing behind my left eye since 3 in the afternoon, a dull, rhythmic throb that felt like a warning. I was curled up on the chaise lounge in my home office, the one room in the house that truly felt like mine, wrapped in a weighted blanket that usually managed to ground me. I had been battling a nasty bout of the flu for 3 days, and my body felt like it was made of lead and broken glass. Every joint ached, and even the soft glow of the desk lamp felt like an assault on my senses. I reached for my mug of ginger tea, my hand trembling slightly as I pulled it toward me. I just needed one night of peace, one night where the demands of my hidden empire didn't clash with the fragile reality of my family life. But peace is a luxury that people like my sister-in-law, Cassandra, don't believe anyone else deserves. My phone, resting face up on the mahogany side table, suddenly vibrated. Then it vibrated again, and again. The rapid-fire haptic feedback hummed against the wood, a frantic buzzing that signaled the family group chat was in a state of high activity. Usually, I ignored the Vance family circle messages until my fever broke, but the sheer volume of notifications forced my hand. I squinted at the screen, the brightness stinging my tired eyes. Cassandra. So, I've been thinking about the year-end gala at the Pinnacle on the 19th. It's a very high-stakes evening for my department. Christian, my CEO, is going to be there, along with the board of directors. It's about image. It's about prestige. I watched the typing bubble dance at the bottom of the screen. A cold pit began to form in my stomach, one that had nothing to do with my illness. Cassandra, I'm going to be blunt. Josephine, I'm officially asking you not to come. In fact, I'm telling you, it's for the best. You're just not Pinnacle material. You'd be like a fish out of water. And frankly, I can't risk you saying something awkward or dressing like you're going to a PTA meeting in front of Christian. It would be an embarrassment to the family and a disaster for my career. I stared at the words, the tea in my mug cooling as I forgot to breathe. The room seemed to shrink. I waited for anyone to speak up. For my husband, Luke, to defend his wife. For my mother-in-law, Beatrice, to remind Cassandra of basic manners. Instead, the deluge began. Beatrice? I agree, Cassandra. It's a very sophisticated venue. Josephine, dear, you wouldn't enjoy yourself anyway. It's much too formal for your tastes. Better to stay home and rest that little head of yours. Cousin Mark. Ha, imagine Joe trying to talk mergers and acquisitions with the board. She'd probably offer to organize their filing cabinets for $20 an hour. Aunt Martha, it's a mercy, really. We don't want her feeling out of place. 11 of us have already discussed it on the side. It's a unanimous no for Josephine. One by one, the likes and heart emojis bloomed under Cassandra's initial message. 11 relatives. 11 people I had hosted, fed, and supported for over a decade. They weren't just excluding me, they were mocking the very core of who they thought I was. They saw a low-level freelance assistant who lived a quiet life. They saw someone dispensable. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The physical chill that swept through me wasn't from the flu. It was a cold, hard clarity that settled into my marrow. I sat up, the weighted blanket sliding to the floor forgotten. My headache hadn't vanished, but it had sharpened into a focused point of energy. I looked at the group chat again. The 11 were still going, discussing the dresses they would wear and the champagne they hoped would be served at the Pinnacle. They talked about the venue with a sort of whispered reverence, as if it were a temple of the elite that they were lucky to even glimpse. They had no idea that the Pinnacle Group was the crowning achievement of my career, a portfolio of the world's most exclusive event spaces that I had built from the ground up, all while letting them believe I was a work-from-home secretary. I heard the front door click open. Luke was home. I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs, hoping he would walk in, look at his phone, and immediately come to find me with an apology on his lips. I wanted him to be the 12th man who broke the cycle. Instead, I heard him in the kitchen humming a tune as he opened the fridge. A moment later, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was a private message from him. Luke, hey honey, saw the chat, don't take it personally. Cassandra is just stressed about the CEO being there. It's probably better if you sit this one out anyway, you're still so sick. I'll bring you some soup in a bit. I let the phone slip from my fingers onto the silk rug. He wasn't going to fight for me. He was going to soup away the fact that his sister had just publicly humiliated me with the blessing of his entire lineage. A few minutes later, the door to my office creaked open. Luke stepped in, his face sympathetic but his eyes avoiding mine. He was a good man in many ways, but he was a Vance first. He had been raised in the shadow of Beatrice's expectations and Cassandra's ambitions. You okay, Joe? He asked softly, moving toward the bed. You look pale. I'm fine, Luke, I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from a great distance. I didn't look at him. I looked at the dark screen of my phone. Look, about the gala, he started, rubbing the back of his neck. Cassandra is just being Cassandra. She's a bit of a shark when it comes to her career. You know how she is. She wants everything to be perfect for Christian. It's not that you're an embarrassment, it's just the optics. The optics, I repeated. The word tasted like ash. Exactly. And Beatrice thinks it's for the best too. She doesn't want you to feel pressured to keep up with the conversation. It's all very high-level business talk. I finally turned my head to look at him. He looked so certain of his logic. He truly believed I was the person they had collectively decided I was. He had forgotten, or perhaps he had never truly realized, that I was the one who had handled the legal complexities of his father's estate when he was too overwhelmed to speak. He had forgotten that I was the one who managed our finances with a precision that kept us in this very house. I understand, Luke, I said, a strange, calm smile touching my lips. I really do. Good, I'm glad you're being so mature about it. I'll go get that soup. He leaned down to kiss my forehead, his skin warm against my feverish chill. As he walked out of the room, he let out a sigh of relief, thinking he had managed the Josephine situation without a scene. I reached out and picked up my phone. I didn't open the family chat. Instead, I navigated to a contact tucked away in a secure folder. The name was simply Sophie Pinnacle. I typed a single sentence to her, attaching a screenshot of the family group chat where Cassandra had explicitly stated that I was unwelcome and that the family had unanimously agreed I would embarrass the event. As I hit send, I felt the first spark of real warmth in my body all day. They had spent years treating me like a shadow in the corner of their bright, ambitious lives. They had forgotten one crucial thing. The shadow is the only thing that knows exactly where the light is coming from and how to turn it off. To understand why Cassandra's message cut so deep, you have to understand the last 10 years. When I married Luke, the Vances treated me like a charity project. I was the girl from the wrong side of the tracks who had somehow snagged their golden boy. During the early years, when Luke's father was ill and the family business was floundering, I was the one who stayed up until 4:00 a.m. organizing the medical bills and restructuring their debt. I did it quietly, under the guise of helping out with the paperwork, because I knew their pride couldn't handle a woman, especially an outsider, saving them. I let them take the credit. I let Beatrice tell the neighbors how she had navigated the crisis. I watched from the kitchen as they toasted to their family resilience. I had sacrificed my own public identity to preserve theirs, and in that silence, I had built my own world. Cassandra, however, never saw the sacrifice. She only saw a target. She was 6 years younger than me, a woman who wore ambition like a suit of armor. She was the senior marketing director for a firm that specialized in luxury lifestyle branding, yet she possessed the most pedestrian soul I had ever encountered. I remember a dinner 3 years ago, just after she had been promoted. We were at a mid-range Italian place because Beatrice didn't want to overwhelm me with a fancy menu. Cassandra had spent the entire night talking about her new boss, Christian. Christian is a visionary, she'd said, swirling her wine. He only surrounds himself with the best. He can smell mediocrity from a mile away. That's why I'm so careful about who I introduce him to. He values pedigree. She had looked directly at me when she said the word mediocrity. What about you, Joe? She'd asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. How is your little freelance thing going? Still doing data entry for those small firms? It keeps me busy, I had replied, thinking of the $300 million acquisition I had finalized that morning for a boutique hotel chain. That's sweet, Cassandra had smirked. It's good for you to have a hobby. Keeps the mind from going soft while Luke is out doing the real work. And now, Christian was the centerpiece of her world. The gala at the Pinnacle was her coming out party as his right hand. The Pinnacle wasn't just a venue, it was a statement. Located on the 70th floor of the city's newest glass spire, it featured 360-degree views, a private elevator, and a waiting list that stretched into the next decade. It was the kind of place where a single night's rental cost more than Cassandra's annual car payments. She had been planning this for months. She had bragged about the impossible reservation she had secured, never realizing that the only reason her company's application hadn't been tossed in the trash was because I had seen her name on the request and quietly flagged it for approval. I had wanted to give her a win. I had wanted to be the silent supporter once again, but Cassandra couldn't help herself. She didn't just want the win, she wanted to stand on my neck to reach it. I thought about Christian. I had met him once at a charity auction where I was the anonymous donor. He was a sharp, observant man who hated pretension. He would be horrified to know that his senior director was using a corporate event to enact a petty family vendetta. My phone chimed. It was Sophie. Sophie, ma'am, I've reviewed the materials. This is a direct violation of the Respect and Inclusion Clause in the owner's private directive. Specifically Section 4. The venue shall not be used for any event where the host actively promotes the exclusion or disparagement of the owner's family or interests. Do you wish to trigger the automatic protocol? I looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, the Pinnacle was glowing like a jewel in the sky. It was mine. Every beam, every crystal chandelier, every drop of vintage wine in the cellar belonged to the woman they had just voted to embarrass them. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis, I whispered to the empty room. But the cure is going to be so much more effective. I typed back, trigger the protocol. Send the standard cancellation notice to the primary contact immediately. Use the owner discretion template. I set the phone down and pulled the weighted blanket back over my legs. My fever was still there, but for the first time in 3 days, I felt like I could finally breathe. The game had changed. They had invited me to a gala and then slammed the door. They just didn't realize I owned the building. The shift happened at exactly 4:12 a.m. The fever hadn't fully broken, but the lethargy, the heavy, suffocating weight of being the victim, had evaporated. I found myself sitting at my desk, the blue light of my dual monitors reflecting in the dark window glass. For years, I had kept my 2 lives in separate, airtight compartments. In one, I was the quiet, dutiful daughter-in-law who brought the best potato salad to the Vance family barbecues. In the other, I was the woman who had single-handedly negotiated the zoning rights for the most prestigious skyline addition in a decade. It was time for the walls to come down. I called Sophie. She picked up on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional despite the hour. She knew my habits. She knew that when I was in execution mode, sleep was a secondary concern. Sophie, I said, my voice finally losing its raspy, flu-ridden edge. I need more than just the cancellation. I want a full audit of the Vance Global account. Specifically, I want to see how the marketing budget for this gala was structured. Cassandra was the lead on this, right? Yes, Josephine, Sophie replied. I could hear the rhythmic clicking of her keyboard. She was the primary point of contact. She handled the negotiations, the catering selections, and the VIP list. Is there something specific you're looking for? I want to know if she's been honest with Christian. She's been bragging to the family about her special relationship with our management team. I want to know if she used any creative accounting to secure the venue. Give me 20 minutes, Sophie said. While I waited, I pulled up my own secure files. I had spent years observing the Vances, not out of malice, but out of a habit of due diligence. I knew Cassandra's professional history. I knew she had a reputation for being a closer, but I also knew that her tactics were often built on a house of cards. She relied on the Vance name to open doors, even though that name carried far less weight in the real world than it did in Beatrice's living room. My phone buzzed. It was a PDF from Sophie. I scrolled through the line items, and there it was. Cassandra hadn't just secured the venue. She had told her company that she had negotiated a family discount based on her personal connections. She had billed the firm for the full premium rate but had submitted a falsified internal invoice to our billing department, attempting to pocket the difference as a consultancy fee for a third-party vendor that didn't exist. She wasn't just a mean girl. She was a fraud. "Sophie," I said, calling her back, "I want you to hold the cancellation notice for exactly 1 more hour. Then, I want the system to send the owner discretion reply. But I also want a second email sent to the CEO's office, to Christian, stating that the venue is currently under internal review due to discrepancies in the procurement process. Don't mention the family drama yet, just the numbers." "Understood," Sophie said, "and the family." "Oh, I'll handle the family," I whispered. I spent the next hour meticulously documenting the group chat messages. I saved every insult, every like from the 11 relatives, and every dismissive comment from Luke. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt a cold, professional detachment. It was like I was preparing a closing argument for a trial. At 5:30 a.m., the first bomb dropped. My phone, which had been silent for a few hours, exploded with notifications. The Vance family circle was no longer a place of smug exclusion. It was a disaster zone. "Cassandra, oh my God, I just got an automated email from the Pinnacle. They canceled. They canceled the 19th. They said, 'Your December 19th reservation at the Pinnacle has been canceled. Owner does not permit his property for events excluding her.'" What does that even mean? "Beatrice, excluding who? Cassandra, call them immediately. This must be a mistake." "Luke, wait, the owner. Who is the owner? I thought you said you were friends with the manager, Cass." "Cassandra, I've talked to her. This makes no sense. Christian is going to kill me. The invitations are already out to the board. We've spent $60,000 on the deposit." I sat back in my chair, watching the text bubbles fly. I didn't reply, I just watched. I watched as the people who had spent the previous evening laughing at my mediocrity began to tear each other apart in a blind panic. "Cousin Mark, wait, look at that phrasing. Owner does not permit his property for events excluding her." The her, it has to be Josephine. There was a long, heavy silence in the chat. A minute passed. 2, Beatrice. "Josephine, don't be ridiculous, Mark. Josephine doesn't know the owner of the Pinnacle. She probably doesn't even know where it is." "Cassandra, Joe, are you seeing this? Did you do something? Did you call and complain like a child because I told you that you couldn't come?" I finally picked up the phone. My heart was steady. "Me? I didn't have to complain, Cassandra. The system is automated to protect the interests of the ownership. Maybe you should have read the fine print in the contract you signed. Or better yet, maybe you shouldn't have posted your plans to discriminate against a family member in a chat that uses a server owned by my holding company." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. By 8:00 a.m., the sound of tires screeching on our gravel driveway signaled the arrival of the cavalry. I was in the kitchen, calmly making a fresh pot of coffee. I had dressed with intention, a charcoal gray silk blouse and tailored trousers. No more pajamas, no more weighted blankets. The front door burst open. Cassandra led the charge, her face a mask of frantic rage, followed closely by Beatrice and a very confused-looking Luke. "What did you do?" Cassandra screamed before she even reached the kitchen. She thrust her phone toward me, the screen displaying the cancellation notice. "How did you get them to send this? Who did you talk to?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, the heat grounding me. "Good morning, Cassandra, Beatrice, Luke." "Don't you good morning us." Beatrice snapped, her pearls clacking as she crossed her arms. Josephine, this is beyond petty. Cassandra has worked for years to get to this position, to sabotage her career over a little hurt feelings. It's exactly the kind of small-minded behavior I expected from you. Small-minded? I asked, setting the mug down. Beatrice, you agreed that I would embarrass the family. You called me a fish out of water. You and 11 other people decided that I was a blemish to be hidden away, and you're calling me small-minded. It was a corporate decision. Cassandra yelled. It wasn't personal. It was about the image of the firm. You don't understand how high-level business works, Joe. You're an assistant. You do spreadsheets and answer phones. This is a multi-million-dollar event. Luke stepped forward, looking pained. Joe, honey, just call them. If you have some connection there, some friend in the office you used to pull this stunt, just fix it. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. We'll make it up to you, okay? We'll take you out to a nice dinner after the gala. I looked at my husband. He still didn't get it. He thought I was pulling a stunt. He thought I had called in a favor from some imaginary boss. There is no fixing this, Luke, I said softly. The reservation was canceled because the host, Cassandra, violated the core values of the venue. The Pinnacle doesn't host people who use their space to belittle others. It's a matter of policy. Policy? Cassandra laughed, a high, hysterical sound. I'll show you policy. I'm calling Christian. I'm going to tell him that my crazy sister-in-law is harassing the venue staff. I'm going to get you blacklisted from every office in this city. Go ahead, I said, leaning back against the counter. Call him, but before you do, you might want to explain the vendor consultancy line item on your expense report. The one for $25,000 paid to Vance Lifestyle Logistics. Cassandra froze. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, I said. It's the company you registered in your maiden name last month. The one you used to siphon off the company's marketing budget while telling Christian you were getting a family discount at the venue. You're not just a mean-spirited social climber, Cassandra, you're a thief. Beatrice looked between us, her brow furrowed. What is she talking about, Cassandra? What is this Vance lifestyle? She's lying, Cassandra shrieked, her voice cracking. She's just making things up to deflect from what she did. She's trying to ruin me. I don't have to try, Cassandra, I said, picking up my phone and sliding it across the marble island. I've already forwarded the internal audit to Christian's personal assistant. He should be reading it, well, right about now. Just as I said it, Cassandra's phone began to ring. The caller ID showed a single name, Christian, CEO. The room went deathly silent. Cassandra looked at the phone like it was a live grenade. She didn't answer it. She couldn't. Answer it, Cassandra, I encouraged her, my voice like silk. Tell him all about the mediocrity you're surrounded by. Tell him how you're the only one who can handle the high-level business. The next hour was a whirlwind of frantic damage control and escalating desperation. Cassandra fled to our guest room to take the call with Christian, her voice rising in muffled, shrill peaks that we could hear through the walls. Beatrice sat at the kitchen table, her hands shaking as she clutched her designer handbag, looking at me as if I had suddenly grown a second head. Luke paced the length of the kitchen, his eyes darting between me and the guest room door. Joe, how do you know about her expenses? How do you have an internal audit from the Pinnacle? You're a freelancer. You don't work for them. I didn't answer him, not yet. I was waiting for the final piece of the puzzle to fall into place. Sophie had sent me a follow-up message. It wasn't just the $25,000. It went deeper. Cassandra had been promising exclusive access to the Pinnacle's VIP database to her firm's competitors in exchange for personal kickbacks. She was selling her company's secrets to fund the very lifestyle she used to look down on me. The guest room door flew open. Cassandra emerged, looking utterly destroyed. Her mascara was smudged, and her hair, usually a perfect blonde helmet, was coming undone. He fired me, she whispered, her voice hollow. Christian fired me. He said the venue contacted him directly. He said the owner himself flagged my account for fraud. He's taking it to the board. He's talking about filing a police report. Beatrice gasped, a hand flying to her throat. A police report? For a Vance? Josephine, you have to stop this. Call this owner. Tell him it was all a mistake. Think of the family name. The family name? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. The name you used to mock me. The name you used to decide I wasn't worthy of standing in a room with you. You didn't care about the family name when you were laughing at the idea of me being a fish out of water. You only care now because the water is rising above your own heads. Joe, please, Luke begged, stepping toward me. Cassandra made a mistake. She's young, she's ambitious. But this is her life. You can't let her go to jail. Whoever this owner is, just talk to him. You clearly have some influence. I have more than influence, Luke, I said. I walked over to the desk in the corner of the kitchen and pulled out a leather-bound folder. I opened it and laid the documents out on the island. They were the original articles of incorporation for the Pinnacle Group. My name, Josephine, was the sole proprietor. I'm not the assistant, Luke. I'm the him Cassandra was so afraid of. I'm the owner. The silence that followed was absolute. I watched the realization wash over them, the slow, agonizing process of their brains trying to reconcile the mouse they had bullied with the lion who held their future in her hands. Cassandra's eyes went wide, her mouth falling open. Beatrice actually slumped back in her chair, the air leaving her lungs in a long, rattling hiss. You, Cassandra choked out, you own the Pinnacle, but you stay at home. You wear those sweaters, you make potato salad. I like my sweaters, I said calmly. And I happen to make excellent potato salad, but I also own 14 luxury properties across the country. I built them while you were busy trying to decide which shade of lipstick would make you look more like a senior director. I built them while you were belittling me at every Sunday dinner. Why didn't you tell us? Beatrice whispered, her voice trembling. We're family. Are we? I asked. Because family supports each other. Family doesn't vote in a group chat to humiliate someone they think is less than. You didn't want a family member, you wanted a servant. You wanted someone to feel superior to. Well, those days are over. Joe, I had no idea, Luke stammered, his face turning a deep shade of red. I just thought you were happy staying out of the spotlight. I was, I said. Until you let the spotlight be used as a weapon against me. You stood by while they tore me down, Luke. You told me to not take it personally. Well, I am taking it personally now. Cassandra suddenly dropped to her knees. It was a pathetic, theatrical gesture that only made me feel more disgusted. Joe, please. If Christian finds out you're the owner, he'll know for sure that I lied. He'll know the family discount was a lie. He'll prosecute me. Please just tell him it was a misunderstanding. Tell him you gave me the money. No, I said, my voice firm. I'm not lying for you anymore. You stole from your company, and you tried to use my venue to do it. You're going to face the consequences of your own actions. You're destroying us, Beatrice wailed. You're destroying the Vances. No, Beatrice, I said, picking up my coffee mug and taking one last sip. The Vances destroyed themselves the moment they decided that kindness was a weakness. I'm just the one who's finally stopping the bill from being sent to me. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them standing among the ruins of their arrogance. I had one more call to make, to Christian, not to save Cassandra, but to ensure that the 19th wouldn't be a total loss. I had a better idea for a gala. One that involved a different kind of guest list. One that didn't include a single person who thought they were better than the woman in the PTA sweater. December 19th arrived with a biting wind that rattled the windows of my study, but inside the glass walls of the Pinnacle, the air was perfectly tempered, scented with the faint, expensive aroma of white lilies and high-end cedar. I stood on the mezzanine level, looking down at the ballroom. It was a masterpiece of light and shadow. The crystal chandeliers were dimmed to a warm, amber glow, reflecting off the polished marble floors like stars on a dark lake. For weeks, the Vance family had been in a state of suspended animation. Cassandra had spent the time trying to launch a counteroffensive, sending frantic emails to Christian and trying to convince the 11 that I had somehow hacked her accounts to frame her. But her influence was hemorrhaging. The family group chat had gone silent, the once vibrant stream of emojis replaced by a heavy, awkward void. I had sent out the invitations 10 days ago. They weren't for a corporate gala. They were for a private founders' reception at the Pinnacle. I had invited all 11 relatives who had participated in the vote to exclude me. I had also invited Christian and his board of directors. I wanted the audience to be complete. I wanted the theater of their own making to have its final act. I saw them arrive in a cluster, looking small and hesitant as they stepped out of the private elevator. Beatrice was dressed in her finest black silk, her chin tilted up in a desperate attempt to maintain her dignity, though her eyes scanned the room with a look of profound unease. Cassandra followed, wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, her face heavily made up to hide the exhaustion of her recent unemployment. She looked like a woman walking toward a gallows, yet still hoping for a last-minute pardon. And then there was Luke. He walked slightly behind them, looking older, his shoulders hunched. We hadn't spoken much. He had moved into the guest room, and our house had become a series of quiet, careful navigations around each other. I descended the grand staircase slowly. The chatter in the room didn't stop, it shifted. It became a low, buzzing hum. Christian was already there, standing near the bar with Sophie. When he saw me, he inclined his head with a respect that made Cassandra's breath hitch. "Welcome," I said, my voice carrying through the acoustic perfection of the hall. I didn't need a microphone. "I'm so glad you all could make it to the Pinnacle. It's rare that we get the entire family together in such prestigious surroundings." Beatrice stepped forward, her voice a forced whisper. "Josephine, dear, thank you for the invitation. I see you've managed to smooth things over with the management. It's a lovely gesture to include us after all that unpleasantness." She was still trying to frame it as a favor I had pulled. She still couldn't admit the reality. "Oh, the management and I are in perfect agreement, Beatrice," I said. "In fact, tonight isn't just a social gathering. Since Cassandra's firm had to cancel their event due to unforeseen internal issues, I decided to use the space to address some matters of transparency. Christian, thank you for joining us." Christian stepped forward, his face a mask of professional granite. "It was an invitation I couldn't decline, Josephine, especially given the evidence your team provided regarding the Vance Global account." Cassandra's glass rattled against her saucer. "Christian, please, I told you that was all a misunderstanding. My sister-in-law has a complicated relationship with the truth. She's been trying to sabotage me because she felt left out." "Left out?" I asked, turning to face her. "Is that what you call it, Cassandra? Let's look at the truth together, shall we?" I nodded to Sophie. On the massive, high-definition screens that lined the ballroom, usually used for corporate branding, a single image appeared. It was the screenshot of the family group chat. The 11 gasped, seeing their own words, the mockery, the cruelty, the unanimous no, magnified 20 feet high was different than seeing them on a tiny phone screen. It was an indictment. "This," I said, pointing to the screen, "is a record of a family deciding that one of their own was a blemish. A record of 11 people agreeing that I would embarrass them in front of important people. People like you, Christian." Christian looked at the screen, his brow furrowing in disgust. "You said she was a mediocre assistant who couldn't handle the conversation, Cassandra. You used that as a justification for why she shouldn't be involved in the procurement process. And then," I continued, my voice cold and steady, "there was the matter of the money." The screen shifted. Now, it displayed the side-by-side comparison of the real Pinnacle invoices and the falsified ones Cassandra had submitted to her firm. The Vance Lifestyle Logistics kickbacks were highlighted in a jarring, unmistakable red. "You didn't just exclude me because you were ashamed of me, Cassandra," I said, walking toward her as she backed away. "You excluded me because you knew that if I were in this building, I would eventually see the books. You knew that as the owner, I have a fiduciary responsibility to flag fraud. You were so blinded by your own elitism that you forgot that the person you were bullying was the only person who could actually see through your lie. The 11 were silent now. Some looked at the floor. Some looked at Cassandra with newfound horror. Beatrice looked like she wanted to melt into the marble. "I've spent 10 years taking the hits for this family," I said, looking at each of them in turn. "I've spent 10 years letting you believe I was less than so you could feel more than. But tonight, the bill is due. Christian has already turned over the evidence of the embezzlement to the authorities. And as for the Pinnacle, consider yourselves permanently barred, not because of your optics, but because of your character." Cassandra broke. She let out a sob, a jagged, ugly sound. "You're a monster, Joe. You're ruining my life over a group chat. You're destroying everything I worked for." "No," a voice said from the back. It was Luke. He stepped forward, his face pale but his eyes finally clear. "She isn't ruining your life, Cassandra. You did that when you stole. And we all did it when we let you treat her like trash. I stood by and watched it happen. I'm the one who should be ashamed." He looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw the man I had married. Not the Vance version of him, but the man who used to value the truth. "I'm sorry, Josephine," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't deserve to be in this room. None of us do." He turned and walked toward the elevator. One by one, the 11 followed, scurrying away like shadows at dawn. Cassandra was the last to go, escorted out by security as she continued to scream about loyalty. I stood in the center of my ballroom, the screens fading to black. I was alone with Christian and Sophie. The silence was no longer heavy, it was clean. "Well played, Josephine," Christian said softly. "I'm only sorry I didn't know the caliber of the woman I was dealing with sooner." "I've always been here, Christian," I replied. "You just had to know where to look." The weeks following the Justice Gala were a blur of legal proceedings and quiet revelations. Cassandra didn't go to jail, not yet, but she was hit with a massive civil suit from her former firm that stripped her of her savings and her reputation. She was forced to sell her luxury apartment and move back into Beatrice's guest house, a place where the Vance prestige felt more like a prison than a pedigree. Beatrice tried to call me a dozen times. She sent flowers. She sent long, rambling letters about family forgiveness and moving past the misunderstanding. I didn't answer them. I didn't need to. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. She knew now that the mouse owned the granary, and her access to the world of the elite was forever severed. As for Luke, he didn't ask for a family discount on my forgiveness. He stayed in the guest room for another month, taking a leave of absence from his own job to volunteer at a legal aid clinic I supported. He spent his days working with people who had actually been marginalized, people who didn't have a pinnacle to retreat to. One evening, I found him in the kitchen. He wasn't humming a tune. He was making dinner, not a fancy meal, just a simple pasta. "I signed the papers today," he said, not looking up. My heart skipped. "The divorce papers." "No," he said, turning around. "The papers to separate my finances entirely from my mother and sister. I've stepped down from the family trust. I don't want a dime of the Vance legacy if it means I have to be the man I was in that group chat." He walked over to the table and sat down. "I know I can't fix what I did, Joe. I know I let you carry the weight of this family alone while I enjoyed the view. I don't expect you to take me back. But I want you to know that I see you now. Not the owner of the Pinnacle. Just you, the woman who stayed up until 4:00 a.m. for my father when no one else would." I looked at him. There was a long way to go. There were years of silence to unlearn and a lifetime of habits to break. But for the first time, there was hope. "The pasta smells good, Luke," I said, sitting down across from him. He smiled, a small, tentative thing. "It's a start." I used my professional network to ensure that justice was served fully for the contractors Cassandra had tried to stiff, and I set up a scholarship fund in the name of the freelance assistants she had so often mocked. I was no longer hiding. I didn't wear my success like a weapon, but I didn't wear my humility like a shroud anymore either. I stood on the balcony of our home that night, looking out at the city. The Pinnacle was visible in the distance, its spire piercing the clouds. It was a beautiful building, but it was just glass and steel. The real strength was here, in the quiet, in the truth, and in the peace of finally being known. The antagonist had faced her definitive consequences, the family had faced their reflection, and I, Josephine, had finally found my own voice. And it was a voice that didn't need a group chat to be heard.